Good morning and welcome to the Chronic Pain Call-In Show, the only show about chronic pain where you can call in live. I'm your host, JosephofBorg. I'm here every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Time. I look forward to talking to you. We got about 3 seconds and we're going to go live, so right about now. That was quick. Good morning and welcome to the Chronic Pain Call-In Show. I'm JosephofBorg. Today I'm going to be joined by Bob Sheeran, and we're going to. He's from. He runs a group online as well called the Pain Pump Support Group for Medtronics and Flonix. We're going to talk a little bit today about chronic pain stimulators versus pain pumps, because you've had both, right? Okay. You want to give me? I was going to say, you want to give me just a little bit of info on your background, and then and maybe just a little bit about your pain, chronic pain issues, and then
Sure.
how you came to get a pump and whatnot. Just so people know who you are and what you're about a little bit.
All right. 1995. I was hurt on a horse and broke my back. I had some bulging discs, and they went in there and did some discectomies and laminectomies. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm over 6 feet, over 200 pounds. They took too much off during the laminectomies, and my back collapsed. Smashed like 4 discs. So it got worse from there on up. As soon as you start getting surgeries, more things tend to happen. Pretty soon it rendered me, I couldn't walk. I found a good surgeon in Paducah, and he got me up and around and walking again. In 98, they were talking about using the pain pump as a failed back surgery syndrome idea, rather than they were using it for pain patients that actually had cancer. So I know there was several of us who joined the program. I was one of the first 500, and got into the program, and it seemed to be doing. It seemed to be good. They knew nothing about it, because of course the people that had cancer were dying after a year, got into the years. So they didn't really know what long life would do to it. And we're running into those issues now with the recalls and stuff that you've probably seen online lately, for people who had them for a while. Medtronic came out with them. Now there's Flonix, like you had mentioned. They seem to have a pretty solid product after 8 years. I tend to trust the company that I know that's been doing it the longest, rather than the new. But in this case, I would say, Flonix learned a lot from Medtronics. Because they've had so less of issues that I'm actually thinking I'm on my 7th pump. They got to be changed about every 5 years. So they tell you 10 years, then they went to 7 years. Now we're somewhere in the 5-6 year range. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. So
yeah, it definitely sounds like you've been through the ringer.
Oh yeah, pain's not fun.
No. I know most people are familiar with my background, so I'm not going to bore them with that. But in my case, I have, in the briefest of terms, I've got the usual host of things that go together: the arthritis, the degenerative disc disease, the nerve compression in my lumbar spine. I've got my cervical too, but that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But it was deemed inoperable because they said it'd be like trying to drill into sheetrock. They couldn't do a fusion. So with that in mind, I was, I'd been through the RFAs, the injections, and I came to the fork in the road where it was either do a spinal cord stimulator or do a pain pump. And I went, and I don't know if this is an accurate impression or not, but I'd made the decision based largely on the fact that my pain had never responded well to oral opiate medications, and even when I had visited the ER and stuff, and they had given me injectables, it really didn't help, primarily with my nerve issues. So that's, and personally, because really, I wanted to cover the topic of some of the differences between them. I was looking at the issue of I'm kind of a science geek, so going electric kind of sounded cool. Um, I think that the spinal cord stimulators have a little bit better rep, if you will, for handling nerve pain itself. And like I said, in my pain had never really responded well to opiate-based medications. So that's why I decided to go electric. And I didn't want to mess with the refills because that was something that I didn't know what my future was going to hold for insurance and whatnot. And if I was stuck with no insurance and couldn't get my pump filled, I figured I'd pretty much be screwed. So those were some of the reasons. But I tell people basically, um, I'll talk a little bit about how spinal cord stimulators work as far as I know, and then I'll have you come in and talk about how pumps work, since there are differences. With the spinal cord stimulator, the easiest and best explanation I've ever heard was given to me by one of the doctors from the Mayo, and he said as the pain signal is traveling up your spinal cord with the electrodes that they put on in your spine, um, they create a little web of neurons, electricity going across your cord. I always tell people it's like when, if you ever watch Star Trek and they're trying to find a cloaked ship and they'll set up a bunch of ships and they'll beam, some kind of energy from ship to ship to create a web so they can see when the ship tries to pass through it and detect it. Well, as this signal's coming up your spinal cord and it hits this web that they've created with the spinal cord stimulator, it intercepts that pain signal. And they told me it's a lot like blocking HBO for people who don't pay for it. So really stripped down to its basics, that's how it was explained to me, and I'm guessing that probably sounds similar to what you've known about spinal cord stimulators, or did you have anything really to add on that topic?
Oh yeah, you hit it. I mean, it just acts as your nerves. They're basically fake nerves. It, so what causes all your pain is your nerves clump, and what this does is it bypasses and it acts like your nerves. So you don't really have a nerve there anymore. You can kind of you just bypass and go straight to the other side of the stimulation, and it takes the leg pain and all that stuff away from you.
That's a good analogy too.
Decent.
So you had pretty good results from a stim
for me. Yeah, for a short time, and we went with bupivacaine in the pump, which it's a numbing agent. I would compare it to Novocaine, and like with your teeth. And, they put that in there, and it goes down into your leg, and it kind of numbs your leg up. So, uh, yeah, there's if you already have the pump, um, and they do have, I know people that's got both of them, obviously on the group all the time, and people swear by them, and some people have had them taken out because of bupivacaine, but uh, you would think since the name of the group has both, names in there, they got Medtronics and they got Flonix in them, you would think, well, you're going to try to talk people into getting them. And it's completely the opposite of that. If you can get by with a spinal cord stimulator and you can take 3 hydrocodones a day and you can live and function, the pain pump's kind of the last resort. You don't really want to go to the ending. we're finding out now things you can only go so high. So you get to a point and you're going to get used to these medications as you take them, no matter if they're in your pain pump or you're taking them orally or whatever. Um, in your pain pump, it works at a 1 at 300 per unit. So it would put a drop of medication in your back a day, basically. Fentanyl's different. It's microdosing. Dilaudid's different. It's it'll give you up to 8 milligrams a day. And then when you hit these plateaus, it's doing the same thing as you're doing when you're taking your oral morphine or your oral hydrocodones or oxycodones or whatever. You hit a certain spot and your pain continues and the amount that you can take goes down, of course. So I recommend the pump if it's your last level, especially if you're a little older. I got it when I was a little younger. I really didn't have a choice because obviously the broken back and the thing, I didn't really have a choice. But now I tell people, you're in your 30s, you might want to think about going elsewhere for a little while and come back because, in 5-10 years, you're going to be at that plateau on the top of the pain pump charts. I've seen it happen way too often. So
yeah,
that's something to people to know.
Yeah, that's one of the things that also, let's be honest, and I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and because you and I have become, I think of you as pain family, because I really respect what you do over in your group, and you call it the way you see it. You don't try and sugarcoat it. You're also not just focused on the horror stories, which is what I try and do in my group too. Which, for those of you who might know, I don't have the logo on the screen. I run a group and a Facebook page called Spinal Cord Stimulator Success Stories. Um, Anytime you start taking an opiate-based medication, your body develops, for lack of a better term, a tolerance to it, which is one of the reasons I'm very judicious about the few pain pills I do take, is because I want them to work as long as possible, as well as possible, because I take a really low dose and I don't want to start going up the tree, if you will, of stronger meds and or larger doses, because as you develop that tolerance, they lose some of their effectiveness, and then at the end of the day, there comes a point where they've got nothing left to offer you. I don't know what your thoughts on that are,
That's
but
right.
so you
My thoughts.
yeah, so you end up, where they just don't have any further to go. I mean, let's be honest, there's only so much your body can take. So, while I've got you on, since we discussed a little bit and I tried to explain how the spinal cord stimulator works, why don't you talk a little bit about how a pain pump actually works? Because I have people ask me, how does it inject the med? Where does it go? What does it do? How exactly the thing works? Since that's your area of expertise, and I haven't had one, why don't you share with us exactly how one of those devices works?
Okay. Yeah. Basically, a lot of people think it's run electronically, which there is a battery in it, but the battery is only for the stir process. It actually runs on gases. Um, the gas is released, the pump is stirred, the medicine's mixed, and it's pushed down into the catheter. Um, now they even have the time medication, so you can get boluses. Like if you start hurting, you press a button, it'll put a certain amount of medication into your spinal column. So going into your spinal column, the doctors decided that you get 1/600th of the medication that you would need to take orally directly into your spine, because they're trying to fix your spine. So what better way to do it than to put medication in your spine, instead of you putting it through your bloodstream? But we're running into the same problems now. So don't get me wrong when I say that Because I mean, there are problems, there are complications, there are infections, there's a lot of things to go through. So when you do something like this, you really have to be committed to it. It's not something that you can, pardon the expression, but half-ass. Um, when the medication is given, you have to be precise with your doctor. It's helping me, I'm almost there. But a lot of people, they do it. Now, who's going to be honest when they go in there and say, okay, well, I'm better now. Here's my oral medication back. I mean, that's what a lot of these doctors run into is they'll get people to what they call a sweet spot, which I never agreed with the word, because uh, everybody that's in pain knows that there's always going to be pain after pain, because your problem's never going to be solved. It's something that you're going to fight for the rest of your life. But it does add, a certain, uh, it gives you just that certain percentage that makes you, how do I put it, not comfortable, but bearable.
Yeah, takes the edge off enough that you can live.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of people use it, a lot of people have success with it, and a lot of people don't. So keep that in mind. It's going to depend on your injuries, how many surgeries you've had, what you've had done. A lot of the nerve stuff, like you were saying, I mean, if it's nerve stuff, if you're getting leg pain, I would definitely try an SCS before and a lot of doctors are going to be pushing the pump. So I'm going to tell you that right now. We have a lot of people that go right to the pump. I mean, no surgeries, no nothing, just right to the pain pump. And I'm a big disagreeer with that. I always think that they got the spinal cord stimulation. I don't really like the injections. I seem to think that causes more. Um, I seem to think that causes more scar tissue. Um, if you keep getting injections and keep getting injections, and a lot of doctors, they won't even give you your pain medication unless you get the injections.
To interrupt you quick, that's one of the reasons I quit with the RFAs and went on to my spinal cord stimulators, because the RFAs were only working about 6 months. And then my insurance, in their infinite wisdom, required, if I had not had the radio, I know it's funny, right? If I hadn't had a radio frequency ablation within 6 months, then I needed to go through the screening process with the nerve blocks again. Okay, so now and then you had to have 2 of those. Now, first of all, you're not going to get an RFA while the old one's still working. And if the last one worked, you would think that they would acknowledge that the next one's going to work. But they wouldn't. So I tried to talk sense to them. My doctor tried to talk sense to them. Now, they were doing 8 locations in my spine at a crack, okay? So now we're looking at going in every time I was going to have it done, and when mine wore off, I was down. I couldn't work. I didn't leave the house. I was pretty much bedridden / housebound. So, they'd wear off. I would have to schedule and get approved to go in for the blocks. 2 rounds of blocks, usually at least a week apart, okay? And then actually get the burn. So we're talking 2 rounds of blocks. That's 8 times 2. That's 16 needles to the spine, plus the burns themselves, another 8. That's 24 trips in and out every time I go to get it done. Not to mention the fact that between getting approvals and everything else, it's a couple of fucking months. So I can't be off work 2 months every 6 months or whatever. And all that, just like you said, I started thinking, first of all, I had heard that generally if you start seeing a shorter period of effect from the radio frequency ablations, that can continue. My first one lasted about 8 months. Second one lasted about 6 months. And with all this traffic in and out of my back, I was like, look, this is just too much needle traffic, and I need something more permanent. And that's why I ended up going to the implant. It's not that the RFAs didn't work. It's just, if you had one location that they had to go in, and if you had a reasonable insurance company that would say, okay, look, the last one worked, we're not going to make you go through all these extra injections. And let's face it, the blocks, at least in my case, they were using them as a diagnostic to see, they knew how long they expected the block to last, and they wanted you to call in as soon as it wore off. And that what they told me they were really
Yeah.
looking for was how close you hit the time to the expected time to eliminate a psychosomatic or whatever effect. Well, I had one where I called in, I barely got home. It was like an hour and a half. And I called up and said, hey, look, my pains came back like a bitch. You know, already. And they're like, yeah, we gave you something short acting, so that's what we were expecting. And I'm like, couldn't you give me something that would last? Give me a day, give me a night's sleep. Hell, work with a brother here. Give me something that's going to last more than just a few hours. But I think a lot of people, when I see people talking about going in for blocks, and they're like, yeah, they tell me they can work. I've never heard of a block working. I've had people say, yeah, they're telling me it can work up to 6 months. I've never heard of blocks, to my knowledge, and we're no doctors. I should have thrown that up front. In case you can't tell by looking at us, we're not medical professionals. Obviously, talk to your doctor. But blocks, from my knowledge, are generally used as a diagnostic to set up and see if you're a candidate for an RFA and if they can hit the right nerve, to do it. It's not the same as an RFA. So these people who
Well, and they want to see if you're faking.
I'm sorry, what was that?
They de- they definitely want to see if you're faking. They will throw a blink at you every once in a while to see if you're faking. They A lot of times these doctors, and I've seen them do it, and I've heard them talk about it. Matter of fact, I've even heard them having contests of who can sell the most epidural steroid injections, and the winner had won a trip. So I know for a fact that these guys, they go in there and they make so much money off these insurance companies for giving these medrols and all these medrols and these steroids in your back, and they have such a low percentage rate that a lot of insurance companies are turning them away now. We were just talking about this a few weeks ago. Now they're trying to do away with fentanyl and the pain pumps. Pretty soon it's going to be oral medications. Now you can only get a certain amount that they'll pay for. And if the doctor doesn't agree with that, you have to pay the rest with cash. And most pharmacies won't even let you have the rest of your medications. So it's going to get worse before anything gets better. I mean, there's got to be something in the middle here where even pain pump patients, everybody, you'll hear, hey man, I feel a million times better. Yeah, you can walk now. That's the difference. Then you can't walk. The people that have the spinal cord stimulators and the pain pumps, they seem to do real well together. Um, my problem with that was when one would die, then I'd have to have the battery replaced, and then the other one would die, and I'd have to have that battery replaced. So every 2 years, I'm going in so they could open me up to keep replacing my batteries.
Yeah, it's too bad
Um,
they couldn't get them in
and
sync.
right, and they won't. The insurance companies, and you're trying to tell the insurance company, hey, if you do this one early, when they open me up at the same time, they could do both of them. And then when you got one on one side of your gut and one on the other side of your gut, it's like that's kind of a pain in the butt. So um, I do recommend them for people, especially if they're having a lot of leg pain, not a lot of, the back pain comes with it. And, they go high up on your spine, if they could find out, where you're hurt at exactly. Um, and it's going to depend on your pain pump too. Like if you hurt, they're going to go, in your L area, your lumbar space, they're going to go up, and they're going to put it in your T area so it trickles down. Now, a lot of people are hurt up in their necks, and they're not getting the results that they want from the pain pumps because it's too high in their cervical area. So and they don't want to put needles too far in your neck because obviously, you could bump something or hit something and you could actually feel the needles inside of your spine. Um, so it's basically giving you a spinal tap, and they're feeding you medications through your spinal tap. It doesn't make you it doesn't make you high. It doesn't make you have euphoric problems. But there are problems out there that cause it. Heat issues are a big thing. Uh, in the Medtronic's handbook, they're going to tell you if you're out in 102 degrees, uh, you can get overdosed. And I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to look out for when you get these things. So, and I recommend don't jump to them. But if it's your last resort, or you're thinking about you don't want to live no more because you have so much pain or something, this is definitely something to try before you hurt yourselves. I mean, I have a lot of veterans, who got blown up and, they didn't want to live anymore and they get these things and they're back at life now. But then you have regular people who got it, who are sorry that got it. So we have like quite a few different angles to take, and it's all, it's bad, it's good, and it's wonderful. So we got a lot of different things in our group, and any group that's doing a support group, be honest with the people that are getting it. Okay, if you do it, this can happen. If you're doing it, this can happen, because that's always important. Because I always feel like, we've saved a lot of lives on our group. They take a picture of their thing and say, oh, well, you're having a rejection, get to the emergency room, and people have done it, and it actually saved their life if they were having it. Hell, and a couple of them went to the doctor that day. So just because you are a doctor or whatever, I think more patients are getting treated like cattle in these pain clinics. And that really bothers me. You go in there and the doctor comes in, 9 out of 10 times he won't even look at you. He just says, how you feeling? What's your pain level at? All right. What do you usually take? Where's your bottle? Let me count them. Take a pee test, and then you go home.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole visit just cost $193. It's like,
Well,
wow.
while we're on it, I see Jenny joined us live, and she says, yeah, her pump never helped anything above her waist, and the doc never even discussed that area for treatment. Thanks for joining us, Jenny. It's always good to see you. She's pretty much a regular here for the show. I'm glad to hear that everything seems to be streaming all right. Obviously, or she wouldn't know what we're talking about. But yeah, while we're on the topic, and this veers a little bit from uh, the pain pump versus spinal cord stimulator topic, but I think a lot of it has to do with, and I caution people, and I don't have a political party. Let me start with that, okay? But you've got all these government agencies in, and like you said, you can't get high. The medication with the pump is distributed, so to speak, or injected at a regulated thing. Unless you've got a bolus for like a booster, you can't really mess with your settings. So they're thinking that I think there's a big push to move from oral medications to a pump because that takes away the opportunity to somehow abuse your meds. But let's be honest, if you've been managing your chronic pain for years or in a lot of cases decades, if you were going to have an addiction issue, you'd have had it by now. That's what my doctors have told me. Look, with as much access as you've had to as many opiates as you've had, if addiction was going to be an issue for you, you'd have been there by now. Okay? But you've got we'll call it the alphabet soup agencies involved in everybody's business. And I'm a firm believer that you and your doctor should make the best decisions for you. I don't like the insurance companies in there. I don't like the government in there. But I think this, what I call the opiate witch hunt, is really spurring people, doctors and insurance companies, to push people into pumps who haven't maybe tried everything else. Because like you said, now, if you can take 2-3 pills a day and get by, then you're going to be I would be awful hesitant to move on to an implanted device. However, let's not pretend that managing pain with oral medications, especially opiates, doesn't have its downside.
Oh,
From
yeah,
bone
exactly.
loss, like we talked about, lack of effectiveness because you develop a tolerance to them, for better or for worse, or to use that term. But so I think you're seeing a lot of push that way. And I tell people, if you really want, this is going to cut the line of politics, but if you really believe that you want the government in your business, talk to a couple chronic pain patients. Because I quit counting. I literally had to quit counting and keeping track of how many people I know who had managed their pain successfully through oral medication for years, and again, some of them decades. And with this opiate witch hunt going on, they lost their meds, especially when it first started. Now they're starting to see some reason, it seems like. Maybe a little bit, and like you said, there's got to be a wise middle ground. But and they literally off themselves because they lost their pain meds, and they committed suicide. And I make the morbid joke that it's easy to tell an addict from a legitimate chronic pain patient, because when you take the meds away from both of them, the addict will go score on the street and the chronic pain patient will kill themselves. And but see, the problem is then it's too late. So I don't want to get off on a soapbox rant there, and I should probably think about winding this up because I'm starting to feel fidgety. I'm getting to the max on my sit down time. One thing I thought we'd touch on quickly, and I'll let you run with it once I mention it, is that one thing that I think people don't go into either of these devices understanding or expecting is that both for their differences, they are both, like you said, a process. If you think you're going to go in, get surgery, come off the table, heal and be done, and it's a set it and forget it like the rotisserie thing on the infomercial, that is not the way either of these devices work. I talk to people all the time. I'm 2 weeks out and I'm not pain free. Somebody sold you a bill of goods. I know spinal cord stimulators, and from the many people I've talked to who have pumps, are not like any other surgery. You get a hip replaced, you get a fusion, you go in, they do their thing, you heal. What you get is what you got, and you run with it. Yeah, like Jenny says, they're not an instant cure. Okay, once you heal, which is usually, I always tell people about 12 weeks because I've heard that from doctors and veterinarians that if they put a screw in a dog's shoulder or a human shoulder, 12 weeks, that's what it takes to scar in and whatnot, and it'll improve for up to a year. So I use 12 weeks as the thing. Then you start with the spinal cord stimulator pumping. Excuse me, with the spinal cord stimulator, you start your programming. With the pump, you have to get your meds dialed in and whatnot. And both of them are a process. If you go in thinking that
Which
they're going to do this and you're going to be fine, and that's all there is to it, they're selling you a bill of goods. You have to, and not that doesn't even begin to touch on the fact that if you've been in pain for a while, you probably haven't been moving much. If they remove your pain through whatever means, you're not instantly going to be who you were. You probably got muscle atrophy and range of motion issues, and there's going to be some rehab involved to regain your old self or life or as much as you can. So before we log out, if you'd speak to that a little bit, and then we'll probably wrap it up before I start to having to walk around the room.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, and just to be quick about it, you just that when you get a pain pump or an SCS, it's not going to happen overnight, like you said. Especially with a pain pump, I mean, they're cutting muscles, they're tendons, all kinds of stuff to make a pocket in your belly, and then they're going to run it around. So you're going to have 4 cuts, and it's going to take a while. So you got all these places that you get cut, you can get infections from. So you got to stay clean. Uh, Even after that, they're going to bring your medication up. You're going to go back once a week for 6, 7 months before they start bringing you back once a month, and then once every 2 months. I'm at a place now where I go in once in every 3 months. They put medication in, and I go home. But I've also been doing it for 20, 4 or 5 years now. So it's, there's a difference. And when you get your trials, people, if you go out and you get a pain pump trial, make sure they're not putting bupivacaine in your trial dosage. Make sure it's going to be something like morphine or fentanyl or something you could take, and don't have them put anything in that you're allergic to orally, because they've already proven if you're allergic to it orally, you're going to be allergic to it in your spinal column. So, and contrary to belief, there's no closed system. If you take that and you take a pain pump and you pee for a pee test, or you pee for a job, it's going to show up in your urine. So there's no closed system in your body. Your brain, it's going to secrete it. It's going to send it out. It's going to go into your liver. I mean, it's going to do damage just like opioids do. If you can get by with a spinal cord stimulator, if you can't do that, I would say the next step would be ketamine, if you can try it. And I'm not a big fan of it, but I hear it works pretty decent. And if it's the last resort, man, go out and get you a pain pump if you don't feel like being around no more. Because I mean, I know I wouldn't feel like living without one. So it's hard for me to tell people to go out and get it, when I don't even want it. So, but I'd rather see you live and, in some kind of peace than, but just don't go run out and get one, because they will sell it to you. Believe me. I mean, like you did. I mean, they offered you, a spinal cord stimulator or a pump. I mean, and I'm glad you went with the spinal cord stimulator, because look what all the mess you'd be going into now. I mean,
yeah.
You'd be going into the thing. So yeah, I get it. I understand it. So hindsight, I mean, I'm glad I have it. But last year they sold more pain pumps than any other device. That includes pacemakers, the stuff for diabetes, everything. So
Wow.
this is the highest selling thing right now. They are pushing it. So before you get it, get the trial, see if it works. And remember, you're not going to get that trial level till 6 to 8 months later. They're not going to get you to that level for 6 to 8 months. So whatever you feel in that trial, you won't be back there for 6 or 8 months. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And they do go after your oral medications. So remember that when you're getting a pain pump, they go after your oral medications, because you shouldn't need all of them when you have, a pain pump already. You're getting medication in your spine. You shouldn't need all that. You got other ailments, your neck, your shoulders, your knees, like me. You better find a doctor who does that, because a lot of these doctors, once you're on the pain pump, you're done. No medications, no nothing. So
Yeah, see, that's
keep
brutal,
that
and
in mind.
I think that's something a lot of people aren't aware of. And yeah, that's brutal. I didn't, to be honest. I mean, I had heard some people losing their meds after they got their pump, but I hadn't really heard it put that bluntly. So I appreciate, like I said, I knew having you on that you would be blunt and honest. And a couple people have commented, great show, very informative. Hey, that's what we're here for. I got nothing but respect for Bob and what he does over in his group. I know a lot of times we refer people back and forth to one another's group when they're looking for information, which I find very flattering, and I hope he appreciates, because you guys talk. Let's be honest. When you go out looking for information on the internet, there seems to be a slice of the population that delight in terrifying people for no good reason. I talked to somebody recently. Okay, we recently had a catastrophic failure, somebody from my group, and I knew it was coming sooner or later because bad shit happens, okay? They're messing with your spine. Don't let them make it sound like there's no risk. But she ended up at least temporarily paralyzed from about the waist down doing the rehab, and I really struggled because I knew intellectually it was coming, and yeah, I don't think I'm so powerful or anything that that it was my fault, but I did feel at least mildly responsible because, after her trial, she was like, I'm so glad I found this group and I've been encouraged by this and that to actually go forward with it. And she went, and it all went foobar. and I felt really, really, you know, I don't want to say I felt responsible, but to a certain point I did. I'm not going to lie. So I wanted to find out a little bit more about the negatives because we all know if they're messing in your spine, bad shit can happen. So I joined one of these groups for spinal cord stimulator failures, and oh my God. Now, bad shit happens. And my heart bleeds for the people that have terrible results. But, when you got people talking about these devices are evil, look, it's a device. It's like this stapler. Okay, this stapler is neither good nor evil. It's an inanimate object. You know, and on and on. One gal, she got from what I could get from her story, in between her exclamations of how these things were horrible and every doctor was a bastard and they should all rot in hell. Quite literally, those are quotes. Um, when somebody gets they had gotten an infection and lost a body part. I'm not going to go into details because I'm not going to share anybody's particular story. Because they were like, "Oh, you want to get fodder for your show?" I said, "Well, if you guys either you want to share information or you don't. I'm trying to get your side of the story. I'm not here trying to exploit anything. I'm not going to use names." So anyway, they'd had a complication. I believe it was an infection. They ended up having to lose part of a limb. Tragic. Okay, but you can get an infection from any surgery. I'm not excusing it. I'm not saying it's not tragic, but it's not necessarily the spinal cord stimulator's fault that you got an infection.
Or a paper cut.
Let's be real. Yes, you can get an infection from damn near anything, especially when you're in a hospital or a surgical setting. That's why I think they are so eager to get you in and out. Most people I know get their spinal cord stimulators. They're in and out the same day. Overseas, other places, it seems to be a little bit different. But I've been told that one of the worst places you can be if you're sick is in the hospital. Because everybody at the hospital is sick. They're trying, and as they've gotten more and more resistant infectious agents and shit that can travel from person to person, it's just not a healthy place. I mean, how many of us have been through it? You go to the doctor and you end up sick with something you didn't have. You go in because you sprained your wrist and you leave with a head cold, because everybody in the waiting room is sick. So, but again, I think we really covered some good ground today. If people have specific questions, I always plug it. You can. I didn't really take live calls today because I've got this guest on, and I'm only got so much computing power. My computer is a POS at best. But if you've got specific questions about either of these devices, questions for Bob, questions for me, leave them in the comments. You can email me at JosephofBorg@gmail.com. And Bob, do you have an email that you can give for people if they want to contact you directly?
Sure. They could just, it's all the way BNA at Gmail.
Okay. So and I will probably put links to that, and I'll put a link to your group in the description, and a link to along with mine, and that way if people want to come looking for you to get more information about these devices. But yeah, neither one of these devices, I tell people, desperation breeds courage, because I talk to people, and you and I have talked about this, and I've seen you post about it, where they're scared, they're too afraid to try it. And I tell people, desperation breeds courage. When you are out of options, you will try some ridiculous shit. Okay, let's be honest, it will drive you to extremes. Right. And when option B is a bullet, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, if you are thinking about killing yourself because your pain is so bad, well then by all means really look at these devices and giving them a shot. But if you, like you said, if you can take an occasional med, or you can manage without them, yeah, they're not to be taken lightly, and they're certainly not some kind of quick fix by any stretch whatsoever. So yeah, Jenny says they took her off her oral meds 2 weeks after the pump was put in. So, Jenny, if you ever want to share your story, I would love to do a Zoom interview with you and, share it. I know you've been through the ringer too, and I know you've got a lot to offer as far as information from your story goes. So, but yeah, Bob, I want to take a minute, like I said, and just really sincerely thank you for getting up early on a Sunday. I know it's real early for Vegas. 8 a.m. in Vegas is early. I used to go to bed at this time back when in my previous life. But I do. I really want to thank you for coming on, taking the time to share the information, and for the work that you do. I really do appreciate it, and I think I will let you go, and I'm going to sign out of here before I start squirming too much more. And I really can't thank you enough for helping out today and for the information you share and the work you do in your group. So, like I said, if you got comments, questions, feel free to leave them. I mean, I always tell people it's a network, it's a two-way street. Otherwise, I start feeling like I'm just screaming at my webcam, or screaming into the darkness when nobody responds. So I'll give you a chance here to sign off, say any parting words that you got in mind, and then we'll just log it off for the day.
No, just thanks for having me. And you guys, if you have any questions, just ask me and I'll answer anything you got.
All right. Well, thanks
You guys
again.
have a good one.
Yeah, you too. And I'll let you go, Bob. Have a great day. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. That's going to wrap it up for today on the Chronic Pain Call-In Show. Kind of a special edition. It's my first attempt at having a guest in a long, long time. It looks like the stream went out good, which I find really encouraging. Since I've gotten some tech resolved, I now see that my image is all fucked up, but it is what it is. I ain't much to look at anyway. So I want to wish you guys all a great day. Thank you for joining me on the show. Again, feel free to leave comments or contact either one of us. And with that, Joseph of Borg, one love, you guys. I'm out of here.